Thank you for your votes, your trust, your honour, the President tells the people. The Drogheda car bomb is linked to Wednesday's double shooting in the town. And Scotland seizes the moment. Yes to home rule, yes to tax powers. Good evening and welcome. It was a simple ceremony today at Organiser when Mary Robinson laid aside the trappings of presidential office. With a style that distinguished her 7-year term, she signed the end of one glittering career. But there was no delay in moving to a new beginning. Mrs. Robinson went directly to Geneva to take up the post of UN High Commissioner for Human Rights.
Just after midday, the final act in Mary Robinson's presidency was enacted in the state reception room at Organiser. In front of the party leaders and the Presidential Commission, Mrs. Robinson said her final farewell as the 7th President of Ireland.
This is obviously a very difficult moment. I'm about to sign the formal document of resignation to take effect from 1 o'clock today. And I would like to take the opportunity to thank the people of Ireland who voted for me, trusted me and honoured me in November of 1990 to become the 7th President of Ireland. It is the greatest honour that anyone can have. I thank all of the Irish people who wrote to me, so many of you who wrote to me and expressed your appreciation of my term as President, but in particular wished me well, and your wishes are a great help. And my final words are for Nick and my family. Nick, as you probably know, went to Geneva, where our youngest has already started school, and I said, you have to come back, because I can't get out of Organiser without your support, as indeed I have so valued and needed and welcomed your support throughout the 7 years. And behind that support is the support of all of the staff here in Organiser. I'll now sign the document, and indeed, as I go to do it, being the good lawyer, I want the right date. What day is it anyway?
The lawyer turned President and the next United Nations Commissioner for Human Rights then signed the instrument of resignation, her final act as Uachtaráin na hÉireann. Then just before 5 to 1, Mrs. Robinson, accompanied by her husband Nick, appeared at their kitchen window to turn out the light in the window, which for almost 7 years had been the powerful symbol of her presidency. And as she departed, the presidential standard was lowered. At the main door, a chance for a last wave and a comment to the media.
Yes, but also mixed emotions. Looking forward to it.
Earlier, the Taoiseach, Mr. Ahern, paid tribute to Mrs. Robinson.
I think it's sad, actually, quite frankly. She's done such an excellent job over 7 years. I've had a chance of talking to her just after she signed the warrant for the last 10 minutes or so. And I think she feels quite a lot of emotion. It's a job that she's really enjoyed doing. She's been tremendously successful at home and abroad. I think she's created a whole new definition of the presidency. You remember the argument 7 years ago, could you do a different style of presidency without changing the constitution? And most people believe that you could not. But she never looked for any change.
Just on the stroke of 1 o'clock, as her resignation came into effect, her car stopped at the gates of Organiser. There a chance for a final thank you from members of the general public. Then it was on to Geneva, where tonight Mrs. Robinson takes up her new post as the United Nations Commissioner for Human Rights.
Mary Robinson carried out her last public function as President today when she opened a Focus Ireland housing project in Dublin's inner city for people with special needs.
Mary Robinson spent the closing hours of her presidency among some of the people to whom she had dedicated her term of office.
I'm having my last public event as President with Focus Ireland.
Her final public engagement was to open a new Focus Ireland social housing complex in Dublin's inner city, where she was given a warm and enthusiastic welcome. Focus Ireland's founder and president, Sister Stanislaus Kennedy, praised Mrs. Robinson for reaching out to people on the margins of society and bringing them to the centre. In return, Mrs Robinson paid tribute to the work of Focus Ireland and described her feelings as her presidency drew to a close.
The 7 years has flown. I feel very enriched. It was a great honour, a great, great honour. It is the greatest honour anybody can have. I will always treasure this part of my life, the 7 years of my life, and the reference points you've given me in facing a challenging task.
After officially declaring the development open, Mrs Robinson returned to Áras an Uachtaráin to sign her official letter of resignation. But for some, she left behind a very special, lasting impression.
It was terrific. It was extremely emotional, you know. She's a credit, you know, and an inspiration. I was very sad, you know. I think it's very hard kind of to replace her, you know.
I visited her once in the Phoenix Park and I was with her. She gives loads of things out and she helps loads of people as well.
Meanwhile, in her hometown of Ballina, where Mary Robinson launched her campaign 7 years ago, her father summed up the mood of the town on her final day in office.
Fairy tale, wasn't it? Fairy tale, I think, to most of the country, but I think it was wonderful that it did happen in Ballina. That's where it had to be, that's where the roots were, that's where she came from, and she always loved her Ballina, and still does.
As Mary Robinson stepped off the national stage today and took her place on an international one, there was a symbolic ceremony at one of Ireland's most westerly points. The lighthouse at Loop Head in County Clare has served as a beacon to ocean-going travellers. Today it was chosen to honour the woman who for 7 years was for Irish people at home and abroad, the keeper of the light. The lighthouse at Loop Head in County Clare, which for years has guided thousands of people home and away from our shores, was central to a symbolic ceremony marking the end of Mrs Robinson's 7-year term as president. A stone commissioned for the ceremony and unveiled by the Loop Head keeper of the light, Tom McInerney, pays tribute to Mary Robinson, describing her as guardian of the light for the past 7 years.
We greet you today on this day of ending and beginning, President Robinson. In this ancient cathedral of light and land and sea, at the crossroads of the world, and in the name and the presence of our people, at home and abroad.
It was a ceremony symbolising the connections which the President made on our behalf during her term, drawing similarities between the light at Loop Head on the edge of the ocean and the light in the Áras, lit for all those who live far from home. The presidential flag was then replaced by the United Nations flag to mark Mrs Robinson's new beginning as UN Commissioner for Human Rights. Gardaí believe that a car bomb which exploded